I remember walking through the crowd. I remember a little bit walking out the path to get to my car. And then the next thing I remember, I was out of my body in the white light, in this wonderful feeling, looking down. My body was leaning against the tree like this with my legs straight out. There was a police officer crouching over me there.
Laurence, thank you so much for joining us. I am always intrigued when I hear about people's experiences, and I don't like to share what happened because I think if people hear directly from you, it has much more of an impact and it's a bit of a surprise. So if you could just tell the audience a little bit about what happened to you and what led up to where you are today.
Well, the thing you said about a surprise is definitely what happened, and still there's surprises. And so to understand my story, a lot of it was in 1976, and I had never heard of a near-death experience. I mean, I had some brushes with spiritual things, somewhat in science fiction, but never, I mean, looking back, it's kind of naive that I didn't grasp it sooner, but I think the not knowing has been a blessing because it's meant that I've wanted to learn more and more and grow. And so it was in 1976. I was 22 years old. I just turned 70 about 2 weeks ago. So it was quite a while. And had been living in Longmont, Colorado in the United States, working in a restaurant, enjoying my job. I worked my way up to second chef, which it was a pretty high-end restaurant that I really liked. My roommate in Colorado I grew up in the Northeast of the United States, about 1,800 miles away from where I was living. And my roommate in Colorado was a friend of mine from my hometown. And we decided to go back east and visit our parents. So we did. We drove pretty much straight through. He had this great Datsun 280Z. And it was a fun car to drive. And so we were up, young and up for the challenge of driving straight through. And we got back to Rye Brook, New York. He dropped me at my parents' house. And we decided we'd connect later and, maybe do something in the evening. Also, part of the story is there was no cell phones, there was no internet, there was, nothing. Even I don't even remember how we found out about a party. Like nowadays, everything's so texting and stuff. But he found out about a party a friend of ours, another friend from high school was having, so we decided to go. And we were going to meet there. I took my mom's little Ford Bobcat, and we were at the party. It was really a great party. Dancing, I still remember. The house was so crowded. Everyone was having a good time. And we both were kind of tired and decided to leave a little early. And I kind of came up with a plan to leave my car there and tell the young lady who was having the party that I couldn't drive because I was too high. But I didn't think that I was. But it was a way to go back the next day and talk to her because it was too loud at the party. And so I had my friend drive me back to my parents. Almost all the way back there, I remembered my sister needs, and I still remember that moment when realizing my sister needs the car the next morning for her to go to work. And so I had my friend bring me back. I remember walking through the crowd to tell the girl that I was going to take my car. I remember walking through the crowd. I remember a little bit walking out the path to get to my car. And then the next thing I remember, I was out of my body, in the white light, in this wonderful feeling, looking down. My body was leaning against the tree like this with my legs straight out. There was a police officer crouching over me there. I never found out. I kind of assumed he pulled me out of the car, but I did not check that out. So I was in the white light. It was all white around me, down. And even when I think, there's part of it that just makes no sense because, it was dark there and it was white here, and I don't even know where differentiation was there. But so I was in the white light. It felt just wonderful. And as soon as as soon as I go from trying to explain it in my mind to feeling it, I can tell what it is. And all these years, I've never quite figured out the exact right words to say, but it was this loving, it was like a warmth and kind of cool at the same time, and just everything just seemed so good and so right, but not in a way like whoopee, just like everything was peaceful and nice. Okay. So I was in the white light. Behind me, there was a big circle of white, and in there was a full silhouette of a being that was white also, with all these different shades of white radiating off of him. I don't know how long it was, but I do remember looking down on my body, even though my head, you can probably see the scar still. I mean, it's been there all this time. Everything seemed fine, even though my head was cracked open, the car was so smashed. The police officer looked totally fine with it too. Like, I guess it was just kind of part of his job. But so I don't know how long it was. Then the being behind me said, "You have to go back. Your father wants you to stay." One thing I was very conscious of in my thoughts and in my mind, that the father he was talking about was not my physical father, that it was God. And I went back into my body and came to 3 days later in the hospital. I have some glimpses of kind of coming almost up to the surface during those 3 days and just seeing bodies walking by. But so I came to, I knew this had happened, but I did not know what to think of it. And I'm a very kinesthetic, touchy-feely kind of person in the physical level, and my experience was way more feeling than knowing in my mind. It took me quite a while to tell you the truth, even though I know the words to say to it, there's still part of it when I go into the feeling of it, it starts to move, and it's like, oh yeah, it's so much more than I could ever comprehend. And even right now, I'm just feeling that lifting me up there. Some things that so it was kind of like this change took place in me, and I've been trying to follow it and figure out what it is all this time. And I do have the words now. Obviously, people talk about near-death experiences. It's in TV shows, it's in movies, all this spiritual stuff. So I have words to it, but it's still, my words always, it's, there. One part of my studying was to study Jalaluddin Rumi, the poet, and he writes this thing about how it's called the telescope to love. And he says, love of the physical level and the spiritual level are both a telescope to God. And it's good to try to put it in, obviously I'm not saying exactly, it's good the words are good, but every time, and he says, every time I experience love, I'm ashamed of my words. And that really is what it's like, because it's almost like, oh, I'm so far from the experience. And so a couple of things happened. One is my hands started to become warm when I touch people, and that still happens. The other one, these synchronicities started to happen that kind of led me on this path where I've become comfortable in living. The first synchronicity that happened, so I was in the Northeast, is when I was well enough, I moved back out to Colorado. Not too long after that, my mom kind of bribed me to move back to the Northeast and go into my dad's business, an electrical contracting business. One day after work, I was sitting in my apartment and someone knocks on the door. I opened it and there was this beautiful woman there. And she says, I'm the sister of your friend from Colorado, happened to be one of the people I just mentioned my experience to. And this woman at the door said, I knew who she was talking about right away. It's funny because they looked very similar, except the one in Colorado had blonde hair and blue eyes. The one at the door there had dark hair and dark skin, but their bone structure was so much the same. And that was partially because their father was Italian and their mother was Swedish. So they, anyway, and she said, my sister told me some interesting things about you, and I know someone who teaches about what happens after we die, and I want to introduce you to him. So I didn't do anything. She just showed up at the door, and in a certain way, I realized, I was thinking about it recently, that might have had as big effect on my life as a near-death experience, because I'm sure something would have happened, but for this woman to show up without me looking or even knowing what to look for, she introduced me to this Sufi sheikh that I studied with for years. The first time he was really talking to me directly, he started to talk to me about Mary right away and would say how open she was to God's love. And as soon as he said that, I go, that's the love that I felt in my near-death experience. Then he started to talk about Jesus, and as soon as he said Jesus, I just knew that being behind me was Jesus. And I ended up studying with him for like 10 years. He taught me a lot about healing. I had some very mystical experiences with him also. I can't hear you.
That's a lot to have gone through. Wow. So I'm just going to go back just a little bit.
Okay,
do you
sure.
think that accident was meant to happen?
Well, I think everything is kind of meant to happen. I think if I had been paying attention to the signs that happened before that, it maybe didn't have to happen that way.
Yeah.
I mean, sign that happened a few years before my NDE was I saw my passed away grandfather in a movie theater, and I just kind of ignored it, but I knew he was not alive. So I knew that, and I had other things looking back. They were spiritual experiences, but I was so, I don't know. Obviously, I've been sensitive to this stuff, but I kind of ignored it. So I do think, I think it's impossible for us to be outside of our karma and our spiritual destiny. It's just impossible. But there's a choice within there. It's kind of like on a multi-lane highway. You can't get off the highway, but you could choose which lane you're in. And a friend of mine once said this thing, spirit will whisper to you, and then whisper a little louder, and then yell, and then knock the door down. And you want to listen before the door gets knocked down, but I didn't. And that's not the only time I didn't listen. So.
Well, that's how we learn.
Yeah.
School of hard knocks.
Right. So when you say that, yes, it was, yes, it had to happen because I needed a knock on the head, basically.
I'm also just wondering, because I've been doing a lot of reading and I've interviewed quite a few people, but I think that if somebody's already on some kind of a spiritual path already, things like this would happen because it's almost like a kickstart. It's like the universe saying, right, you're ready for this now. So
Yeah.
had you not been on that already, some people are not ready for that.
Yes, there's variations in there. And there were, like I said, looking back, and now I've learned to kind of surrender and realize that I have no idea. I mean, I do know a lot. That it's not true, but there's a whole lot of knowing and then realizing you don't know, and then knowing and then not knowing, but going with the flow. Not, back then I was not knowing and going back to just focus on making money and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. So did you ever meet up with that lady that you liked? Was that
From the part,
what happened
no.
with her?
Someone asked me that the other day, and it's funny. I drive by sometimes because it's a place I go, and the house isn't there anymore. There's a medical office there. So
Have you seen The Matrix? It's like, don't look at the lady in the red dress.
well, there's been a few other times. I mean, the lady showing up at my door. There's been other times that
Yeah.
but it's something in me gets without me thinking about it, gets pulled in the direction of these mystical experiences.
So now, okay, so you had this, it was quite a long time ago, but
Yes,
it's as fresh to you now as it was then.
a lot of it
What
is.
has
Yes.
changed? Yeah, because it's spiritually transformative. I mean, it's like any kind of thing. If it's a trauma, you will remember it as if it's yesterday. What has changed with people though? Because I know that like this happened a long time ago. There's a lot of people that I've spoken to who said they just couldn't speak about it before. What's changed for you to be able to feel like now is the time? Now I'm ready.
Well, when I was with the Sufi sheikh, I mean, we didn't talk about near-death experiences, but he had a near-death experience, and a number of his other students did too. So within that little group, it was kind of okay to talk about it, but even, I don't know, even then it was like kind of egotistical to think I could have had a transformation like I did. So, and something that happened, I'm not usually very good at keeping track of dates, but I was teaching classes at the University of Bridgeport in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And after I was teaching classes on mindfulness and breathing exercises, I'd go there like once a year for a few years. And after one of the classes, the woman said, she's teaching a class, I think it was called Death and Dying, but it was about rituals from different cultures about dying. And I said to her, I had a near-death experience. I had heard of that phrase by that, and she was so excited. And I had heard the term, but I didn't know it was such an accepted thing. So I post something on Facebook just saying, oh, I'm going to, be back next week again to teach a class about this, and I'm going to talk about my near-death experience. And, within seconds, there were like 50 likes and people saying, what? I want to hear about that. And then I started seeing groups on Facebook, and it's like such a common thing these days. So that part, in one way, I'm embarrassed. Like I should be an individual, not care what people think. But it's nice when people are accepting it, and you can share that part of yourself. And even the thing when I say there's no way to put words on it, people get it, because so many people, even outside of near-death experiences, people have spiritual experiences, and they're aware of it these days. Like I said, it's in TV shows, it's in movies. So, it's like I could talk to pretty much anyone about it. Not everyone's going to believe me, but very few people are going to think, oh, he's crazy, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know we've all had previous lives, and we come back and we go. So there must be a grain of remembrance even in the people that don't believe it. Yeah. It's almost like we've been so indoctrinated not to ask questions, not to think that there's anything else outside, that the fear overwhelms, and it's the fear that pushes the love away. Yeah.
It is, and it is, right. I say everyone's on a spiritual path, whether they think so or not. And it's true. A lot of times people have experiences, and it's almost like it's such a part of them, they don't realize it's even spiritual. It's, there's so many examples I have, but being a parent is such a spiritual experience. And, most people are too involved with parenting to even think of that point of view about it.
Absolutely. Just having a child is a spiritual experience, just by the fact you're bringing a being into the world.
Yeah. And it's definitely different for a woman or a man, but for me, just part of things. So it was a great experience for me, that's for sure.
So tell me a little bit about the Sufi, because my grandmother used to be a Sufi, and I've always been fascinated with, and I've watched a documentary on Rumi, and I've read his poems and that, but is that something that is practiced quite widely there, or is it more kept too close to people? I'm not really in touch with that culture, but I'm sure, so Sufism is like the mystical part of the Islamic religion. And I know that's kind of have offshoots into other religions, but as far as I know, when I was studying it, I know there was like the main sheikh lived in Turkey, and it's like a part of the religion basically. It was great. So it was the Mevlevi dervishes. So those are the ones that follow the teachings of Jalaluddin Rumi, and there are other that follow other teachings and that one was kind of liberal, which meant the men and the women didn't need to be so separate, and it was really focused on that love. And Rumi's words in his book, The Mathnawi, it's actually 6 books. Those are the words for me that come closest to it in so many ways of describing these experiences. So I studied that for a long time with him, and he taught me a lot about healing, and he was a character, that's for sure. I was just thinking I spent 2 weeks with him in
the panhandle of Texas on this giant ranch, and I was just thinking of some of the fun experiences. First of all, there were like cowboys on the ranch. On Saturday night, there was a big party. It was interesting to see the cowboy culture and the Sufi culture partying together and, just having fun. But the cowboys would like drink the whiskey, throw the bottle up in the air and shoot it with a gun. And, there's something about the masculine energy of the Sufis that's kind of like that. It's very intense. So it's kind of fun.
Sounds like fun. So, did you do dervish dancing as well?
I didn't. I learned how to do it a little bit, but one thing that the sheikh said to me all the time is, "I'm not really your teacher," but he would say, "We'll find you a teacher," and he said that a number of times over the years. And after a while, I stopped asking what he meant about so many things because he normally didn't answer me. Um, but I did learn a little bit. But he said that being in the ceremony was not for me. And so I learned how to do it a little bit.
Interesting. Because I know they have their head to the side. Is that to
Yes.
stop them from getting dizzy, or is that to help you
It's
connect?
actually, it's kind of like, and a lot of the things about those teachings were written in a time when the world was different, but not so different. But it is like you're opening your neck to God so he could cut your head off, basically, kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a little dramatic of you're showing your vulnerability to God, basically, and opening that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the right hand is up to receive the energy, the left hand is down to give it to the earth, and you're spinning around in a way like you're just letting everything go, and it's like this of almost like I'm yours, God.
Well, I suppose it's like a natural high.
It
So,
is.
would the right hand be the masculine side then?
Well, on the physical level, we receive on the left side and give on the right side, but in the
Yeah,
spiritual level, it's the opposite. So it's kind of each level it alternates back and forth.
yeah,
But
that
in,
makes sense. Yeah. So now you've been teaching, lecturing and stuff. What is it that you're doing at the moment?
I'm actually almost finished writing my book about all my stories. So besides
Oh, lovely.
studying with the Sufi Sheikh, I studied with a Hindi teacher for a while, a Jewish teacher for a while. All these different, and it's so much fun to write the book because these little synchronicities happen. So with the Hindi teacher, first of all, both the Islamic teacher and the Hindi teacher were teaching me about Jesus and Mary, and it was just interesting that right away they both said that to me. But also with the Hindu teacher, she told me to get these. She was teaching me how to do a tarot reading, and she gave me this specific deck to buy. And because a lot of it was about the symbols and the Hindi divas and stuff like that. So, and it was interesting because she told me a couple of stores to try and they didn't have it. And one day I was with a friend of mine who happened to move to a new place, and we were walking in this town, and there was this like new, I don't even know if it was called New Age back then, and it was hardly even, there was so few things in it. And we just went in and looked at it, and the deck of cards was there that I was looking for that was so hard to find. So
Oh,
these great little synchronicities all the time happen. It's great.
yeah. So are you doing tarot now? Do you read the tarot?
I don't. And again, she told me this was not really my way to work, but I would learn. So you just learn a lot about the symbols. And there's been time I do work with symbol. So when I'm working with people, a lot of times I see images of things, and sometimes they're just the beings in the spirit that are coming in, and sometimes they're symbols. And but sometimes I work with these Hawaiian symbols or ancient Egyptian symbols. They're not the same as in the tarot, but that was learning how to work with the symbols.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just to be able to interpret things easier, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's in all these things in the same way when I say that we can't get the right words on it and people get it, it's like the spirit comes in behind the things. So we want to
yeah.
be a little flexible in our thinking to understand we're just presenting something and allowing the spirit to come in, and it comes in.
I find it interesting that English has only got one word for love. You know, like I know, I think the Eskimos have got about 50 words for snow,
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah. There's a
something
lot of
like that. We've
love.
got
There's a
one
lot
word.
of definitions in the dictionary for love. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, varieties, you know, passion or
yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
right.
So,
There's spiritual
yeah,
love is different than physical love, and there is a lot of loving our kids is different. Loving, our partner or spouse. So many different
so
loves.
when is your book ready?
It's almost ready. It'll probably, I should get to it soon. I'm actually going to be going away in a couple of weeks. And so I would say in about a month it should be done because I have all the stories written out. I just need to go back and uh, I'm not that great of a writer naturally. So it takes going through it a few times to get the words the right way and make sure it's saying the right thing.
Yeah, yeah. We'll look forward to that. So, Tommy, you said your hands are warm since then. Do you do hands-on healing, or what happens? Is it just
I
something that happens spontaneously?
I do some. Okay, so when I first started doing healing work, it was all hands-on. So one of the things I studied that, again, I can tell the stories of how I got connected to it, but I actually went up to visit one of the other students of the Sheikh in Vermont, and he introduced me to polarity therapy. And polarity therapy is based on Ayurvedic medicine, so the culture is very different than Sufism. But so I had this profound polarity therapy treatment. And it was, I mean, flashes from my childhood, emotions. And one thing that really shows how profound it was I was going to get off the table and almost complain because the woman said it'd be about an hour. And luckily, I thought it was maybe a half an hour, but I looked up at the clock and it was 3 hours I was on the table. And I just lost sense of time, very similar to my near-death experience. And then she introduced me to someone closer to where I live. And I started studying that, and a lot of the things I learned from the Sheikh became more real for me when I started doing hands-on stuff, and I was able to feel the difference in the energy currents, and then I did that for a long time, and actually when my daughter was about 2, and she's about to turn 20, I realized I was living in New Jersey, going into the city to work. I realized I didn't want to be commuting, and I started working on the phone with people, and it shifted. But when I work with people, I hold my hands up because all this energy comes through, even though people are like as far away as you are. I have some clients in your country and, in Europe and all over the place. So. But
Yeah.
yes, this energy comes through. I did not know what to do with it in the beginning. A few things happened where I just saw the effect of it, and I still didn't accept. I mean, I guess I'm very stubbornly naive or something because looking back, it's like, why didn't I get it sooner? But, I know now that this incredible energy that I experienced a lot of in my near-death experience comes through and heals people. It's such a blessing. I get such a kick out of it. As you could see when I'm thinking about it, it's hard to stop from laughing.
So tell me, like a lot of people that have come back from near death say that they've got a new sense, so either clairvoyant or clairaudient, something shifted.
Yeah.
Is that because the veil was lifted? I'm just like, I've been wondering about that. Is it because when we're born, there's the veil, and now that it's lifted, it's no longer blocking, and it's actually
Yeah.
something we're capable of? Or is it something you have to develop?
Well, I think you get in the near-death experience, you get to experience it directly because you're not having your body. But like I said, the part of not knowing has been a blessing for me because I've been working to develop it more and more all these years. And it's, every once in a while, and maybe 2 months ago, I noticed a big shift in what I can do. And I just think that's important because, so the answer is, again, it's hard to explain, but I think during your near-death experience, you get to experience it directly. And, like I said, for me, not knowing what it was and looking to find and studying with these different teachers that were, miraculous healers and really knew what to do. So it's both. I think everyone can develop some of that, and everyone has something miraculous and majestic inside of them that they can express. It's, it might not be healing, but it could be anything, being a parent, like I said, it could be being a cook, it could be, you know, being a carpenter, anything. But there's, yeah, so I'm trying to put it into words, but there's just this wonderful thing that is so big and more than you could think of. And part of me just wants to close my eyes and go, I don't even want to talk about it. So, but that's inside of everybody. And you
Yeah.
can learn to do that through meditation and journal writing. Those are probably the two. And finding someone to work with who's kind of higher up the food chain than you are. I think that's very important. That's the easiest way. Otherwise, it takes
Yeah.
a really long time.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that because you have a body and we have a spirit and we have a mind. But if your body's out of the way, then your spirit, you have direct contact.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe the body blocks people from having that. It's almost like the body wants to rule the show, your ego or whatever.
Yeah, or yes, our mind. It's like, right, a lot of parts of us know, but the part of us in charge here does not know and is very resistant. And well, and there's also the part of it's almost adverse to maintaining the physical body because, when we become purely spiritual, then we're not physical. So there's our minds trying to figure things out in a logical way. There's part in our body that's trying to maintain the physical, and it definitely gets
Yeah.
in the way.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you were more like, when you first started going on the path, that you keep going back to your, let me chase after the financial world and let me, be in the world and not out of this world. What changed? Is it just as you started working more with these people, or is it something that just kept guiding you back to say, no, this is the path we're on. We need to keep going in this direction? Or do you think once you've had a taste, you will rebound and say, you know what,
Yeah,
this isn't here. I can't find it here.
it's a little bit of both of those. I mean, something in me just keeps kind of dragging me, or and it's yeah, it's all those things. But it is, and part of it is understand there's no separation there. So it is opening this wonderful thing here, and there is God's abundance, and making a living is part of that. And but it's not just having money; it's having love and having good things. It's also giving. It's being, it's. I mean, there's any of the questions are like over here, and the answers are here, and then when you're in the answers, it's like the questions don't even matter. And that's like, well, can I step into that? And so when I'm working or when I'm doing something like this, I'm really, really connected into the energy. When I'm not doing those things, I'm not always as connected. And so I experience some of those struggles and stuff. And so sometimes so we do have karma, and there are things that we've come here to learn and work through. And it's more just to go through them than really having to get an A+ on the paper. It's just you go through it. So when those things come up, I've learned a lot of tools, and I can do it somewhat for myself, but I can do it much more for clients where there's ways to connect them, help them connect and clear those things that are blocking that. But within there's always something to learn, something like you might have messed up or done something mean in another lifetime, and then you have to learn about it in this lifetime.
Yeah.
So then everything is one. So sometimes I experience it like there's the spiritual, physical, and you go back and forth, and it's almost like you can't experience them at the same time. But with the intention, it goes back and forth, and then all of a sudden it just goes whoosh. It's like, oh yeah, I can be spiritual and drive the car. I can be spiritual and clean the house. I can be spiritual and go to work.
You can be spiritual in your normal life without
Yeah,
having
yeah,
to go and sit
yes.
and meditate somewhere. Yeah.
You got
So,
to. The meditation helps to practice because it
yeah,
is those ego and our body or personality. We got to learn to keep it all
yeah.
all here instead of out there.
Yeah, it's like I know in India, if they can meditate on a busy street in the middle of the street without
Yeah,
being distracted by the sounds, then it means you're able to connect no matter where you are. You don't need to sit quietly somewhere in a temple.
yeah. Well, yes. So, but it does help to practice at home in the quiet before.
Well, to
So,
start, absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's, yeah. It is. It's work. It's ongoing, and you know, I know for me, there's always further to go. So I think that's really important, and I also convey that to my clients. Like I don't have it down perfectly, but
Yeah,
I can help people do a lot, which is great. I
yeah,
mean, I get such a thrill out of it. Like there's part of me that still is in awe of it happening because part of me doesn't understand how it happens. And when like the other day, I was working with someone and then they sent me a message after saying, wow, my body's been so energized for days. I was like, wow, that's so cool. And I mean, I remember the session, but I didn't remember knowing anything. So usually the energy lasts very clearly for about 3 days, but this person was just really feeling the flow for 3 days. It was so nice.
what is it that most of your clients are struggling with?
All sorts of things: physical, emotional, mental, financial, relationships. And I mean, really, the remedy is pretty much all the same: is to connect them with God and with their spirit and with this knowing inside of them, and then so that we are on a path, and within there are things we do through our positive qualities and attributes. We want to express those things in the world, and that's more a part of whatever it is. Even the physical things, like sometimes just the energy comes in and the person feels better.
Yeah, yeah. I think people it's they're looking for the quick fix, and they think this big diet or this greatest medical
Yeah,
something is going to do it, and this isn't. Wow, it's not any of that. If anything, it's the opposite. It's kind of going deep within because we've got the answers inside,
yeah.
and allow them to come and not block them. And that's more sitting around doing nothing than actually going what you want to do.
Sometimes it is. I mean, sometimes I work with people and they get better in one session. I mean, I love to see that, but more times than not, it's more than that. The thing that's frustrating for me is sometimes I can see things change in someone, and I could see in the person's consciousness they're looking at a different place, and I know. And yeah, I have all these stories. So years ago, I had this client come see me, and I was recently thinking about this, and I'll tell you how and why I was thinking about it at the end of the story. But this was when I was doing body work, and I did polarity, which is very gentle. After that, I learned how to do deep connective tissue massage, which is very deep. And she came to me for that, and she cried almost entirely the whole time for 12 sessions. And one time she didn't cry for maybe 10 minutes and told me a little bit about her life, but, and I know that's part of the process. But still, I was feeling, I don't want to be hurting anybody. So, and the last session, the 12th session, I decided to just do polarity because I was thinking, is by the deep body work hurting her, and is that why she's crying? She cried the 12th session the whole time anyway. I just held her head almost the whole time, like, gently like this, and she cried. And then I didn't hear from her. And of course, my personality ego's going, what did I do wrong? Could I have done better? And then I ran into her a few years later actually in Denver airport. And I saw her from far away. I knew it was her, but she looked so much healthier. Like she had been, she was white. Her skin was so pale, bags under her eyes. And I remember her figure was like this, because when I saw her this time, she was shapely and she just was moving, and her skin. And I was still a little nervous to see her because I didn't know if I did a good job. She came up, oh, it's so good to see you. That was like the greatest thing. And so much changed in my life. And she worked for a publishing house. She started her own publishing house. She got rid of this boyfriend that wasn't good. She changed her whole lifestyle then. And it was so good to hear, because sometimes I don't get to see. I know when I'm doing it, I know it's the right thing, but then, sometimes I go into doubt. But she gave me this book called The Web That Has No Weaver, which has become a standard in acupuncture, people studying acupuncture, but she said I decided to, direct my small publishing house towards healing and holistic approach because what you did, it really inspired me. So I was looking, so the web that has no weaver, the description in there comparing Eastern and Western medicine is the greatest. It's so good. And I use it from time to time when I talk to clients, but I was giving a talk and I was looking up some quotes. And when I looked online, I saw this book had become a standard in acupuncture schools everywhere. So it was another level of success for this woman. And it was just great to see that, from my doubtful thing of doing the healing work. And like I said, when I'm doing it, I know it's right. But then when I think about it, it's hard to understand. So it's good.
Yeah. And also people are only ready to receive what they can receive. Some people can take a lot and some not so much. Sometimes it's just planting the seed.
Yeah. And it gets things going. And yeah, I can have stories about all these things where people finally get it. And it's kind of cool when they do.
So what is polarity therapy? I've never heard of it. Is it
It's based on Ayurvedic medicine. It's very gentle, really more so holding these different points and waiting for them to balance. And balancing basically is the pulse starts to come in to my hand, into my fingers and into their body, and they start going at the same pace and the same rhythm on each side. But it's very gentle. It's very gentle.
I know when you do Ayurvedic, they do measure your pulse. They hold it and they check. So is that what you do? Is that what they're measuring for?
In what I did, I didn't check the pulses. It's kind of like there's similar to acupressure where you're using the acupuncture points all over the body. It's like that, but even more gentle. Because in acupuncture, you're kind of massaging it. In polarity, you're mostly really just holding it. Sometimes very little, but you're waiting for the points to balance out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what is the importance of that? Is it just to balance the male and the female, or is it?
No, there's like in acupuncture, there's 5 basic meridians and they're connected, to different organs, different emotions, and you balance them out. And like the thing holding the hand like this is called the 10 cranial nerves. And so you're balancing the cranial nerves that go obviously from the brain to the body.
Okay.
So yeah, there's the fire meridian, similar to the heater in acupuncture.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to that because I know there's the fire, the water, the air, and
so
what do they call that? Pitta, Vata.
The earth, the air. Yeah, it's called the etheric. The fire. I'm not even remember. They're a little bit different but it's very similar to acupuncture. The theory is.
Yeah. So where can people get hold of you?
They can get hold of me on my website, which is laurencebrock.com. I have lots of videos on my YouTube channel, Dr. Laurence Brock. There's some lectures, other interviews, and there's a lot of self-care tools. All the tools, most of the tools I recommend to clients. There's a meditation, there's journal writing practices, and there's other self-clearing and healing on Dr. Laurence Brock. My phone number, you can text me on texting or on WhatsApp at 732-567-6388 in the United States, so +1.
Yeah, awesome. I'll put all that in the description below.
Thank you.
Before we go, do you have any message for our audience?
Meditate and journal write. Meditate and journal write. So, yes, my work is really quite miraculous, and I've learned to be able to say that and smile and even as I said that, I'm a little embarrassed about it. So, but if you can do sessions with me, it's really an amazing thing. And, and God's gifts come everywhere all the time. So try not to let your ego get in the way of that. But meditation, even if you don't think you're doing a good job, take the time each day to do that. Even if your mind's going blah, blah, blah the whole time, and the journal writing, those 2 things can incredibly help you if you just stick with it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it does, it helps. Even if it's just to get your thoughts into some kind of order, you know, just
Yeah,
to
even if
acknowledge
that doesn't
yourself.
happen, it's taking that time where you're dedicating yourself to your spiritual growth, your connection to spirit, to God, and to yourself, and you just take that time. And with time, so I've been meditating most days for more than 40 years, and some days it just blah, blah, blah. I got to check my phone. What about this? And some days that goes on, and then all of a sudden the energy comes in. So it's a reminder that I don't have to be like, quiet in my mind all the time. Sometimes it just takes a little while of that chatter and then it gets quiet. Sometimes I can, I'm in the place right away, but just doing it and taking that time for your spiritual growth. And most of our spiritual growth happens beyond our knowing. So when you're meditating, even if you're not thinking you're doing a good job, you probably are. And it
Yeah,
also starts to help the spiritual work we do in our sleep if you take time to meditate.
yeah. Would that be best to do that before you go to sleep?
Whatever time's good for you. So I normally do it kind of in the late morning. So I get up, I do journal writing almost always right away. I do drink coffee, so I'm drinking coffee and doing journal writing. And then I'll usually do a little bit of exercise and then meditate. Some people like to do it at night. If you wake up in the middle of the night, that's a really good time to meditate because the energy frequencies where you live are quieter at that time. So at
Yeah,
any time, it's not, you don't need to cross your legs. You don't need to do it at a certain time. It just takes the time to do that. And when I was in the master's program, we had to commit to doing 1 minute of meditation a day. And I was already meditating more than that, but it was a really good example of just take a minute a day, like that's
yeah,
easy to do. And then it can grow from there. And so 1 minute is a whole lot more than zero. Okay. And
yeah,
just be gentle with yourself and know that you're doing it. And that's what's important.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
Fascinating story as always. I loved hearing from you. Yes, I look forward to getting your book. If you can notify me when it arrives, that would
I
be
will,
great. And then
yeah. So
I'll
yes,
put
if
it,
people want to know about that, on my website you can sign up for my mailing list, or on Facebook I post things a lot. So my personal account is Laurence Brock. My business is Dr. Laurence Brock, but I do mailings and posting on
lovely,
Facebook and stuff about all that stuff. Yeah.
lovely. I'll post that in the description as well.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing. It was lovely
Thank
meeting you,
you. It's
and
nice
I look
talking to
forward
you.
to connecting with you again sometime.
That'd be great.
Have an awesome day.
Thank you. Same to you.
Bye bye.